other conditions, which makes it even less of a social responsibility than anyone had conceived. So I have some reservations about whether this is really going to reach the betterment of the common man that is intended, or the rural society as it is intended. I'm sure the next thing that will happen is that the government will define what is CSR, and along with the bad, some good will also be sort of regulated. So we should wait and see what happens as this unfurls itself. But I think it could be a very dangerous thing, or it might actually turn out to be well. I think how it's written up in its fine print is going to be the issue.
Midun?
Good afternoon, sir. The Tata Group was seen as one of the front runners in the race for a banking license. Why did Tata Group withdraw from the race?
I believe the issue really is that Tata Group looked at the conditions of a banking license that would impact the manner in which we were structured today. And the board of Tata Sons considered that it would not be a worthwhile thing for us to do under those conditions, and took a decision finally to withdraw. And personally, I fully support that decision to withdraw, because some of the conditions would have been conditions that made us restructure our financial services activity. We had joint venture partners, and we had some serious problems on how to arrange it to comply with the conditions of the banking sector. And again, rather than try to circumvent it or try to put a facade in front of it and do something else, I think we did the honest thing of withdrawing our application for a banking license.
Nikshit?
So what are some of the leadership lessons that you learned early on from JRD Tata, and how have they helped you in your career to face all the challenges?
The leadership after.
Lessons from JRD Tata.
Okay. First of all, I think I need to tell you that the best years of my life with JRD Tata were, unfortunately, the last few years of his life. We got to know each other and befriend each other for a totally non-business issue, that both of us were pilots and we both shared a common love for aviation. And had that not been there, we probably would hardly have known each other, and I wouldn't be sitting here today. JRD Tata lived a very simple life. I think if you look at his legacy was that of a very simple person. He would refuse to jump a queue to stand in line for something. If there was a queue to buy cinema tickets, he used to love to go to cinemas. He used to sit on railings waiting for the queue to get rid so that he could go and buy tickets. And in those days, we didn't have the newspapers or the TV channels, so that Mr. JRD Tata's face was not splattered all over the place as one might have expected it to be today. So he was often not even recognized at that time. And whatever he did in terms of simplicity, he lived the same way. And you could never poke your finger at him and say he had two standards or he preached one thing and did another. He lived absolutely to his last day the way he wanted all of us to be. That was low-key, understated, and driven by values rather than by personal personal avarice or greed. I think all those issues were lessons to me as I went through my career and as I got to know him. And my only great sadness is that we didn't have more years together where I could have learned even more about the way he lived his life and the legacy he left the group.
Bhargav.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, Tata Motors has not come up with any alternative fuel cars like electric or liquid hydrogen. So what is the Tata Motors roadmap for this, and what would you suggest to make this available at low cost?
I think Tata Motors does have alternate fuels in CNG. It has worked on electric vehicles and will have electric vehicles in the market in a short period, in a period of time. I don't know how short or long that would be. Are you talking of something other than that?
Yeah, something like liquid hydrogen, and currently I think hybrid concepts are there, but a purely electric car is
Liquid hydrogen or hydrogen-driven cars have been something I have dreamt about for a long time, but there's still several issues relating to how you would produce the hydrogen, how you would store it, how you'd transport it, and how you'd hold it in the car. So I think there are several issues that have to be overcome. There's one school of thought that, and one that I share strongly, is that hydrogen is a tremendous alternative to petroleum for cars. And I don't mean fuel cells either. I mean hydrogen running an internal combustion engine. But I don't think there is going to be a solution to the problems I just mentioned, so that to make it, nobody would like to have a car that had a tank which is like a bomb at high pressures and containing a very flammable fuel. So I think there are several issues that have to be overcome, but I share your enthusiasm for hydrogen, because I think that is one day, if they are solved, going to be a good alternative to continue the internal combustion engine, which is not going to go out overnight.
Pujita.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, having been the chairman of TATA Group for 21 years, the standards you have set for an individual to handle this role are very high. Would you think it's the most difficult challenge for the successors to achieve these standards?
Do I think it's going to be a difficult or a challenge to achieve these standards?
What do you think will be the challenges in maintaining the standard of?
You know, I think if we let me restate that. I think those standards have to be set at the top, at the very top, at the group chairman's level, and have to be very passionately followed. I think we have about 400,000 employees today, and no one can speak for the value systems of each and every employee. So there may well be one or more employee who discredits the value system or the ethics that we have stood for. How you deal with that employee, I think, is important. Whether you can avoid such an employee being there in a large organization or not is something you can't control. But how you deal with it when it happens is something that you can control. And I think that there has to be no compromise. There needs to be an absolute ferocious protection of the value system. And you have to lead by example. Whenever we've had a problem, if my hands were not clean or if my intentions were dubious or questionable, I would never been able to take action to ensure that others would follow in the same manner, and anything I tried to do would have come back on me. So I think the example has to be set at the top, and he has to live by that value system himself. And I'm hopeful that the group will continue to do that, because it's something staring us in our face. If we lose it, we've lost everything that has made us different from many of the other groups in the country.
Vaishali?
So good afternoon, sir. Sir, in December 2013, when you addressed the gathering at Harvard Business School, you had mentioned that during your advanced management program, in the early days, you felt that you're not confident enough. Early days, but later on, the program transformed you and your perspectives. According to you, if you hadn't attended the program, how would things be right now?
What would you have missed?
If I hadn't attended the
If you
program,
hadn't attended the program, what would you have missed?
I'd have missed a lot, but let me just explain what I said. And it may have applied to you and all of you when you're here. I went into the advanced management program when, after 10 years in business. And you get cocky, you think you know a lot, and the first cases that are put in your room for the first week, as you go through them very enthusiastically, you come to the conclusion that you've actually faced the situation before, you know exactly what needs to happen. And you'll be the star of your class because you have 10 years of experience. So you go to class and you sit in dismay because you find the discussion and the direction in which the case is progressing in terms of what really happened and the challenges that are thrown back and forth in the class is different totally from what you thought it would be. So the first thing that happens is you don't speak because you're not as confident any longer as you were the previous night. And as then the case finally reaches a conclusion and you figure if you had spoken, you would have looked absolutely foolish. Then in several cases, the CEO will come in and talk about the case, and it again makes you feel that you didn't know what you were thinking. And as the first few weeks go on, you get totally confused as to what you're learning or what you're bringing to the class in terms of your knowledge. So you get confused, and I certainly did. You also get humbled, and you also your arrogance comes down. And then when you leave the course, you still are asking yourself a question as to what you learned. And then slowly as you go through, thereafter you start to get messages in your memory in terms of what you have been taught and things that have been said. And then you gain this tremendous value that you have acquired from the class, which doesn't all come on you the day you collect your certificate or your degree. So there is an issue of confusion, there's the issue of humility, and there's an issue of unlearning what you think you know. And all of that is a very worthwhile experience. If I'd not done it, I would never have missed it, and I'd never have known I'd missed it.
Suryanka Saxena.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
So my question is that what is the most significant change that was noticed by you in yourself over the past 22 years when you led the TATA Group from the front?
Maybe the biggest change I can see is that the need or the importance of communication into the organization was a revelation to me, the need for it or the importance of it. by nature I've been a shy person, so I communicated very little. And when you communicate very little, you're often misunderstood, or you're often face disputes which you can deal with. I was and still am very nervous about public speaking. So you tended to write out what you wanted to communicate as a written communication rather than speaking. And that written communication also distances you from the people you're trying to communicate with. So maybe the most important thing that has happened to me has been overcoming that fear of communication, whether it be with the workforce, whether it be with the union, whether it be with managers, which one tended not to do earlier. And what happens in other countries is you communicate with shareholders, you communicate with your employees, etc., much more freely than we do here in India. And I think an organization needs to have its leadership share their views with them and debate them and be open to criticism, which we are often, unfortunately, not willing to do. So of all the things, I would say that that might be the greatest change I have seen.
Lavanya?
Good afternoon, sir. If we consider the case of iron ore production in India, we are able to extract 600 million tons per annum. But right now we are able to produce only 130 million tons. So where do you think we are lacking? Is it infrastructure or technology or efficient manpower?
Sorry, you're talking of iron ore production?
Yes, sir. We have a capacity to extract 600 million tons, but we are able to produce only 130 million tons. So is this due to infrastructure or technology or?
I think I don't know where that information is coming from, because presently the government is making a statement that we produce more than we should have. And so whatever we've been licensed to mine, we have mined, and we are now being accused of mining more than what we were supposed to have done, which is still not equal to our steel production or iron making production capability. So I don't know what this issue is.
Actually, in order to produce sufficient steel for the upcoming projects.
For upcoming projects, let's say like the Orissa steel plant, we still don't have any mining leases available. So you have to look at that in terms of what we have applied for and what has not yet been given to us. Infrastructure we'll obviously invest in when we have the right to mine. I don't know if I've satisfied you on the question.
Kshitij?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, when you were named the JRD Tata's son successor, so you faced a non-cooperative environment, and we'd just like to know that how did you deal with that environment, and what would be your advice to us students as to how to deal with such situations if we were in similar.
What environment are you referring to?
When you were announced the successor of Mr. JRD Tata.
Yeah.
There was a non-cooperative environment as such from within the company or from the stock market. So how did you deal with that situation?
You're talking of his successor being me?
That's right.
Yes.
There's not much there's not much I could say. The market reacted very negatively to me being chosen for a variety of reasons. I certainly couldn't be the one defending myself, and I think JRD, in fairness, also chose to be somewhat silent on that. He made the decision, and he put me there, but I think there were other issues. There was, if I could be open, there were 4 or 5 other contenders for that position, and there was dissatisfaction in the choice that he made. And that got reflected in the media. I think they were JRD's colleagues whom he had in some ways let down because they had felt that they had a right or an ability to succeed him. And so there was a silence, and it was pretty demoralizing for me to go through those period of time. And that's when I decided that you couldn't mimic JRD Tata his shoes were very big. You couldn't fill them by trying to have his feet in those shoes. And you should just do what you could do yourself. So